Hi, everybody. All right, March 31st, Coronavirus Isolation Diaries. We're here, nowhere to go. So, for today's ramble, I figured I'd talk to you about another one of my top 10 favorite bands of all time, the incredible Blue Oyster Cult. According to my notes, I've seen them 10 times. I think I've seen them 12, and I actually opened for them. First time I saw them at the Late Show in Niagara Falls in 1990. That's where I met my buddy Sex Martin, Sex Machine, and just gold time, first time seeing them. And every time I've seen them, they were, way past their prime. It was in club dates. The next time was February 28th, 1991. It was just before, a little under a month before my 21st birthday. I had chalked my ID to get in. And I actually did get in, and there was three of us. All of us, actually the one was 21, but the other one wasn't. And it was a pretty girl. Believe it or not, they let the young guy, the ugly guy with long hair in, but they carded the pretty girl and wouldn't let her in. So that was interesting. That was at Sinbad's in 91. The next time I saw them was... in 93 at the Pelhamwood House, which is no longer, it's actually a Mayer Brothers factory, and my housemate and concert buddy, who was with me at that show, Brother John, was there. That was BOC, Nazareth, Uriah Heep, and Wishbone Ash. So you got that killer foursome. Great show. We only got in late to see Ash, which I was pissed about, but Heap and Nazareth stole the show. It was my first time seeing Nazareth. I thought the Cult was rather weak in that show. The next time was in 94. My buddy's band Urban Sturgeon opening for him back at Blind Melons. That used to be known as Sinbad's. Then 96, Spinning Room opened up at the Evening Star Concert Hall, my buddy Jamie Holka's band at the time. Then in 98 at the Evening Star with Animal Planet opening. That was the guitar player, the guy from Urban Sturgeon, actually, his project. So he's opened twice that I've seen. And then 99 at the Evening Star, April 8th. It was April 8th? My sister's birthday. And that was when I opened for him, NSS and his Bargain Bin Band. And then I saw them in 2000 at Vernon Downs in Vernon, New York. Huge festival with Blue Oyster Cult, Todd Rundgren, Nazareth, Joan Jett, Edgar Winter, and Rick Derringer. That was gold time. And then the next time I saw them, it was in 2000. They opened for John Kay and Steppenwolf at the Majestic Theater, which is Wurlitzer Theater, which is, come on. And my buddy Gooch sent me a message saying what it was. I completely forgot about it. I'm going to remember it as soon as I finish editing at this, and Gooch is going to send me another message saying it was Melody Fair Theater. That's what it was. For the longest time, it was cool because the stage is in the round. And then the last time I saw them was at Club Paradise in 2007. And actually, they did the coolest show and the worst show ever. And I'm going to talk about this. They did... they did She's as Beautiful as a Foot and Shooting Shark. And then they do, Roadhouse Blues for the encore, which, I hate that. So, without further ado, let's move on to the Blue Oyster Cult discography. And actually, the last one I did on Gordon Lightfoot, I got a really nice message from my buddy Trent, who said, dude, I love this type of stuff. And he actually went out and researched a bunch of the Gordon Lightfoot albums that I talked about. And he said, I listened to that one, it was great. And then I listened to this one, it was great. So, Trent, thank you, buddy. This one's for you. Let's get some BOC for you. 1972, the year my sister was born. Since we seem to be mentioning her birthday, and we don't talk, so actually her birthday is next week. 2 years and 2 weeks younger than me. Blue Oyster Cult, 1972, self-titled, amazing album. From start to finish, this is an album that you need to listen to. Again, not a concept album per se, but an album that it starts out with Transmaniacon MC. I'm thinking of Stairway to the Stars. Husband. Right. We're here and we're here to stay. Then they do I'm on the Lamb, but I Ain't No Sheep, which actually later becomes the Red and Black. Third song, Then Came the Last Days of May. Really interesting story about a drug deal gone awry. Beautiful, beautiful, mellow. Third song in, we were bringing it down. Stairway to the Stars. Fourth song in, and they used to open with that. The first time I saw them, and for many years, they'd open up with that song. Just, ooh. Before the Kiss, a Red Cap. Screams, man. Just screams in the night. Just killer. Then the iconic She's as Beautiful as a Foot. Killer name, killer song. Cities on Flame with Rock and Roll. Great groove, great little guitar lick, sung by Albert Bouchard. That was one of their first hits. And then Workshop of the Telescopes. And then a great song to end your journey, end your album, Redeemed. And then there's a bunch of bonus tracks. I actually went out and bought the remastered box set because for the longest time they didn't have it remastered. And they put on a bunch of bonus tracks on there. I'm not going to talk about the bonus tracks, but they're quality stuff because I really want to get to the meat of the albums in the way they were. So, BOC, got to listen to it. It's a fantastic album. 73, Tyranny and Mutation, second album. I find this a little bit of a step back. Still a quality album, but the Red and Black, kind of pre-punky, sort of driving metal, proto-metal, so to speak. OD'd on Life Itself is excellent. Hot Rails to Hell, punky. 7 Screaming Dizbusters. Baby Ice Dog, Wings Wetted Down, Teen Archer, and Mistress of the Salmon Salt. Again, a good album, but just a little bit of a step back, in my opinion. It's 74, Secret Treaties, where they sort of coagulate as the progressive hard rock band. This album, wow, another album. Secret Treaties, listen from start to finish. Career of Evil, The Subhuman, Dominance and Submission. And this is the definitive version. I never liked what they've done to this song live. The original studio version is the definitive. ME262, wailing out guitars. And then side 2, Cagey Cretins. Kind of an interesting little thing. What is that? Is that a worm? Harvester of Eyes, Evil. And then the first of the 3 different versions, in my opinion, of the song Astronomy, and this is Astronomy that Albert Bouchard actually sings. I believe Albert's singing this one, and this is just a killer track, killer album. Listen to it in its entirety, and of course, the remastered version has bonus tracks, which I'm not going to deal into, or I'm not going to get into. The first live album, 75, On Your Feet or On Your Knees. And, how cooler can you get with a great name like that? Well, not really. I'll tell you why. Starts out fantastic. The Subhuman, I love the way it starts out. A really good version of it live. Different than the studio. Not really different, but it works live and has a different vibe to it. Then Harvester of Eyes. Then Hot Rails to Hell. Then the Red and Black. And then 7 Screaming Dizbusters, which is a little bit long, but it's got its moments. And then Buck's Boogie, which I heard them play almost every show, and I'm kind of like bored to tears with. Then came the Last Days of May. Killer Soul in the Middle. Cities on Flame. ME262. Before the Kiss, a Red Cap. End the album there. But no, they stick on 2 more songs that go over 15 minutes. So it's almost an album side. Last 2, Maserati GT, which is a kind of a weak cover. And this is, I don't know why they did this, and this isn't the only live album they do this on. Buck or someone, I'm thinking it was Buck, flubs a note. And they leave it in there. And I know everyone goes like, oh, you know, these albums were never recorded. Kiss Alive was not alive. Frampton came alive in the studio, you know, all these things. I don't know if they're trying to prove that they were really live, but they shouldn't have. And overdub the mistake, because it drives me nuts every time I hear it. And then they end the set with Born to Be Wild, a song that just no one should cover. Everyone does, and they always do an awful version of this song. BOC is no exception. It's you could have given me 2 more great songs in there instead of those covers. And I don't got any problem with them doing covers. Those covers didn't work. So after this live album, it is 1976, and we come out with the big one, Agents of Fortune. This was the monster one for them. A decent album. This Ain't the Summer of Love, True Confessions, and then Song 3, the iconic Don't Fear the Reaper, and then ETI, Extraterrestrial Intelligence. I prefer the live version than the studio version. The Revenge of Vera Gemini, Sinful Love, Tattoo Vampire, Morning Final, Tenderloin, and Debbie Denise. I think it's a mixed bag album. It's not one of their best, but it's a huge album. Again, listen in album order and enjoy the ride. It's actually put together quite well. What they do is they come back with Spectres. 1977, the album next, I think they come back to being the hard rock album band that they should have been, and they open it right up, Godzilla. And Godzilla is like Born to Be Wild, in my opinion. The band did it once. It's iconic. It's not a song that covers well. I don't care who on your planet. The Godzilla version here is fantastic. Steppenwolf's Born to Be Wild is fantastic. Leave it. But you know what? This is rock and roll. Do whatever the hell you want. So they come out. Godzilla, they make their statement. Golden Age of Leather, fantastic. Death Valley Nights, wow. Searching for Celine, Fireworks. Are You Ready to Rock? Which is, and it works better later, and I'll explain in a second. Then they do Celestial to Queen, Going Through the Motions, which is a very interesting pop track for them that I really like. The iconic I Love the Night. I Love the Night. And then Nosferatu. Listen to this in album order. It starts with Godzilla, ends with Nosferatu, and takes you on a beautiful journey all the way through it. Next, Some Enchanted Evening live album, 1978. Now, it originally came out as a single album, so it was a short live album. They've remastered and released a bunch of extra tracks to it, which was, in my opinion, much needed. But the original album was 7 tracks. Are You Ready to Rock? And this version, the live version, fantastic. It just comes alive live. Followed by ETI, Extraterrestrial Intelligence, a much better version than the studio version. Live, bam. Then the second incarnation of Astronomy, my personal favorite, and this one I believe Eric Bloom sings live. Comes out, nice long guitar solo in the middle, and just really rocks it out. Next, I do the cover, Kick Out the Jams by MC5. Kick out the jams, brothers and sisters, they say instead of motherfuckers. You know what? That I don't mind, though I would have loved to heard other stuff. Then they do the Godzilla Don't Fear the Reaper live versions. They're okay, you know. And then they end it with We Gotta Get Out of This Place, which is not a bad cover. I actually enjoy their version of it. But here they go into the remastered version. They brought in a bunch of extra tracks from that tour. So they added ME262, Harvester of Eyes, Hot Rails to Hell, This Ain't the Summer of Love, 5 guitars, which was their famous thing they used to do. And they actually do that. They don't label it as such, but they do it in the middle of, I can't remember which one. I think it's ME262 back in the On Your Feet or On Your Knees live album. They do this where all 5 of them are playing guitar, and they do this like little concerto or whatever, how to explain it. It's pretty cool. So here they've actually distinguished it as 5 guitars. Then they do Born to Be Wild, and then another version of We Gotta Get Out of This Place, because apparently the CD and the album had 2 separate versions of that song. I consider this the end of an era, but I'm going to tack this next album on there. So those 3 are kind of grouped together like the first 4 were grouped together. I'm going to put the next album, Mirrors, 1979, in with that. A lot of people hated it because it was really an attempt to be poppy. It's my favorite Blue Oyster Cult album. I think the title track, Dr. Music, is kind of jizz, but The Great Sun Jester is fantastic. In Thee is one of the most beautiful songs ever written. Mirrors is excellent. I love Moon Crazy. The Vigil they've pulled out, I've seen them do that live, and they pull that out from time to time, is outstanding. I Am the Storm is great, and You're Not the One That I Was Looking For. And then the last track is an interesting Alan Lanier song, who actually he wrote In Thee. So he didn't write much, but when he did, it was great. And it was called Lonely Teardrops. And it's a little disco-y. So it's a different sounding album, but it's my favorite. Give it a whirl. After that album, they had done, I think, who produced that album? He produced Motley Crue. I can't think of his name. He now runs a bed and breakfast in like New England somewhere. He kind of got out, produced Nugent. He produced a lot of bands. So he kind of went more poppy with them, and they didn't care for it. So they did a 1980s Cultosaurus Erectus. They went heavier. I believe Martin Birch was on this one. He was definitely on the next one. They went more heavier. They tried to get into the 80s metal scene. Black Blade, Monsters, Divine Wind, Deadline, The Marshall Plan, Hungry Boys, punky and fast, Fallen Angel, Lips in the Hills, and then the perfect album closer, Unknown Tongue. So check out this album, Cultosaurus Erectus, 1980, start to finish. You will enjoy it. 81, they sort of doubled down on the heavier stuff. They were actually, most of this album was supposed to be the soundtrack for the movie Heavy Metal that came out, the first rated R animated film. And if you haven't seen it, add it to your list of things to watch. Movie's great. And rather than go fully, I think, a BOC soundtrack, they grabbed a lot of the bands, Cheap Trick, Nazareth, a lot of bands from that era contributed to the overall soundtrack. But this album is fantastic. Starts out with a heavy hitter, Fire of Unknown Origin. Second song in, the big hit off the album, Burning for You. Then Veteran of the Psychic Wars, which I believe that was in the heavy metal soundtrack. And then Soul Survivor, which is one of my favorites. Heavy Metal, the Black and Silver. Vengeance the Pact, which was, I think, another song that had to do with the heavy metal. I think they wrote that for the girl with the knife and the flying on the dragon scene. And then After Dark, and then Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford is risen from the grave. And then I referenced this before in one of my earlier things about songs that are album songs that don't translate well to maybe a single, but actually work well for the album. And that was a song I said, don't turn your back off this album. It comes right off of Joan Crawford, and just, again, a beautiful story. The whole album, from top to bottom, just wow, amazing. So that was Fire of Unknown Origin, 1981. 82, their third live album. It's called Extraterrestrial Live. Meh. Dominance and Submission. Again, I don't care for the live version. Cities on Flame. Meh. Again, I really don't care for it. Dr. Music, which was one of my least favorite tracks off of Mirrors. The Red and Black, which is okay. Joan Crawford, excellent. Burden for You, excellent. Roadhouse Blues. Come on, man. And then, of course, they had Robbie Krieger, I guess, join him for that, but burp. Black Blade, yes. Hot Rails to Hell, yes. Godzilla, again, and I believe it was Buck, blows a note in there, and they left it in. And it's, come on, man, we got to hear this forever. And it's got this cornball drum solo in there, which is like, meh. Veteran of the Psychic Wars, that was excellent. Great guitar solo in it. ETI, Extraterrestrial Intelligence, yeah, that's good. And then, of course, they ended with Don't Fear the Reaper. This was actually the first Blue Oyster Cult CD I ever bought. I do have the remaster, but it was the first BOC album I ever bought. 1983. In ETL, the live album, that was when the original Fab Five of that band started to fracture, and Albert Bouchard, the drummer, was left or fired from the band, and so he only plays on 2 of the tracks of the live album. The Revolution by Night 1983 was, I believe, with 3 of the members, and in ways they call them 3OC for a while. And there's some really good songs, really fantastic songs on there. Again, they really tried to be poppy with this and maybe modern sounding at that time. And Take Me Away, yeah, I think they wrote that with Aldo Nova. Eyes on Fire, I really like that one. Shooting Shark, what they've been playing live, fantastic. Veins, I love. It's side 2 that gets a little dorky. Shadow of California is okay. Feel the Thunder, meh. Let Go, yeah, it's okay. Dragon Lady, and then Light Years of Love, which they wrote with Helen Wheels, the late Helen Wheels. Yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag of an album. 86, Club Ninja. And this one was kind of, they really, really, really tried to go pop and really wanted to get a big hit. Many people would say this is the band's nadir. I don't think it is that bad. There's some really great songs on this album. I like White Flags, which was the single. I love Dancing in the Ruins. Rock on Wars. Those first 3 they didn't write. They actually got outside writers, or maybe the record label pushed them to have outside writers. Poppier stuff, but really not them. It was the 4th song in Perfect Water, where Roger Buck Dharma wrote it. Outstanding. Spy in the House of Night, pretty good. Beat 'em Up, another outside writer. I don't mind it. It's not bad. When the War Comes, and I believe that's the one because Bloom was married to a cousin of shock jock Howard Stern. And I believe that's the one that Howard Stern does the intro to. There was some relationship between the two, or Stern was married to his cousin. I can't remember, but that's how he did that. When the War Comes, then Shadow Warrior, which is not bad, and then Madness to the Method, which isn't too bad. An uneven album. Again, many people would say this is the band's nadir. Again, still, I think overall BOC released really good quality albums. It was 88's Imaginos, which is the Blue Oyster Cult album that isn't. Albert Bouchard had been... the prior album, now they had only 2 of the original Blue Oyster Cult members, Club Ninjas, so they called them 2 Oyster Cult for a while. So you had 3OC and then 2 Oyster Cult. In Imaginos, 88, the band reunites on paper. Albert Bouchard, who had left, was working on a studio album. He was with Sandy Pearlman, who's the original producer, mentor, Svengali, if you'd like, of Blue Oyster Cult. Had this whole Imaginos thing that many of the songs on other albums were part of the Imaginos story. So they worked together. It was originally supposed to be a solo album, and Bouchard had been working on this nonstop for a while. And then the record label said, you know what? This isn't going to sell. Let's release it as a Blue Oyster Cult album, get the guys to come in and make some overdubs, and we'll say everybody's in on it. I mean, Joe Bouchard didn't even play bass on the album, and he's the bass player. He did some light percussion. Had a lot of other material, other singers, other performers on it. It's kind of a mishmash, but I think a quality album. I really do think it is. It's just a little different Starts out with I Am the One You Warned Me Of, Les Invisibles, In the Presence of Another World, Del Rio's song, The Siege and Investiture of Baron von Frankenstein's Castle at Wissyria. Yep, that's one song. The third and final interpretation of Astronomy, this time it's Buck Dharma singing. A little bit different. Magna of Illusion, I'm sorry. Then they finally have a title track, Blue Oyster Cult. Not that good, actually. They could have had it better, unfortunately, but not that good. And then the title track of the album, Imaginos, which is kind of not that good. From about 88 to 98, for 10 years, that was the era that I saw them play all the time. They were touring clubs left and right, and I saw them all the time. And then in 98, they released their first studio album, Heaven Forbid. And it took me a while to get into it, but now I say it's fantastic. Poor production, great songs. Starts out with See You in Black, which was a single off that one. I want to see you in black. Makes me feel like your husband's dead. Pounding. Harvest Moon, they've been playing a while, as a precursor to it. Good stuff. Power Underneath Despair is heavy. X-Ray Eyes is heavy. Hammerback is heavy. Damaged is a little bit interesting, kind of funky. Excuse me. Cold Gray Light of Dawn, really good. Real World is pretty good. Live For Me, again, like Harvest Moon, it's a Buck Dharma song. Still Burning, another Buck Dharma song. And then they bring back In Thee from Mirrors. They do a live version of it. And it's all right, as Dark Marcus would say. It's all right. I'm not as blown away by it. So Heaven Forbid, originally called Ezekiel's Wheel. And then it was another 3 years before they released their next studio album, The Curse of the Hidden Mirror. Dance on Stilts, Showtime, The Old Gods Return, which is, in my opinion, up there with anything they ever put out. It's probably one of the coolest, heaviest tunes. Pocket, which I think was a single of it, not bad. One Step Ahead of the Devil, I Just Like to Be Bad. Here Comes That Feeling, Out of the Darkness, Stone of Love, Eye of the Hurricane, and Good to Feel Hungry. Overall, I'll put it back into Heaven Forbid category. It's good. It's for completionists only, but the song The Old Gods Remain is one of the greatest. It's on par with anything they ever put out. Then they started putting out, and in 2012, they released a box set, which is excellent. They actually released a live album in 2002 called The Long Day's Night. I did not bother getting it. I thought they sound haggard. I was bored with the set list. And so I never did get it. They did release a live album in 2020 this year, live at from 2014, live at the Hard Rock. And the reason I got it was a double disc set is because I really like the set list. Golden Age of Leather, some of the strange stuff. They did Shooting Shark, The Vigil. What else did they do that was really good off that one? They did I Love the Night, and they did Hot Rails to Hell, which I'd never seen live. I always seem to miss them. Maybe I did see them do that live. I just felt like I wanted to see that. Bloom's voice is much lower. He doesn't really push himself as much anymore. They're old. I've not seen them, like I say, since, 2002? 2002, 2003, I can't remember what I just said. But, yeah, I just kind of avoided them because I was kind of getting bored. For the longest time, I think they were doing what I called the Buck and Bloom set list. They've now been digging into rare goods, and I'm happy and I'm pleased that they're doing it. So I guess there is something to be thankful for there. They did release a bunch of compilations. They had an album called Cult Classics that they re-recorded stuff on, which I had and then I got rid of. And then like a Rarities double disc set, which now the box set sort of covers. So I think I've got what is necessary. In '92, they released an album called Bad. There was a movie called Bad Channels, and they basically released the soundtrack for it. And they did 2 songs off that, When Demons Kiss and The Horsemen Arrive. Then a bunch of other bands did some stuff on it. And then like tracks 12 through 30 was all the soundtrack stuff, which I heard was mostly Buck Dharma with a drum machine. For completionists only. The band tracks are pretty decent, and the other bands that are on there. Actually, Ron Keel has a band on there, has a song on there, Somewhere in the Night, with a bunch of girl singers. It's not bad. It's all right, as Darkness would say. And then the final thing that I would want to bring to your attention is in '82, Buck Dharma released a solo album called Flat Out. And it's pretty decent, but what I find interesting is Buck Dharma basically wrote the 3 biggest hits for the band: Godzilla, Burning for You, and Don't Fear the Reaper. And here he has the ability to do the entire album as a solo artist. And it starts out with Born to Rock, This Summer Night, Cold Wind, Your Loving Heart, which is interesting, 535, Wind, Weather, and Storm, All Tied Up, Anwar's theme, which is kind of interesting. Anwar Sadat was the Egyptian president that was assassinated, I believe, for the peace treaty that he signed with Israel, among many other sort of reasons. So when you hear that he was actually executed by militants in the middle of a parade, they sort of, I believe they hopped out of a tank or something and they gunned him down. So it makes sense when you listen. It's an instrumental, but it makes sense. And then the final thing is Come Softly to Me. He does an sort of an acapella. I don't know if it's acapella or is it he does have an acoustic guitar, but it's a very just vocal. Maybe it's all a cappella version of Come Softly to Me. What's interesting is here's a guy who probably had the best voice in the band and probably wrote and obviously wrote the 3 biggest hits, but it shows you what a band dynamic does and how the other 4 guys help pull the material into some good stuff. One of the things that I loved about BOC is the fact that everybody sang. Everybody wrote. And everybody, well, Linear didn't sing, but everybody wrote, and 4 of the 5 guys sang. Obviously, Eric Bloom and Buck Dharma. Well, Bouchard Albert did sing quite a few himself. But I think that's what makes the band really work, is that everybody writes, sings, and I like that. It gave that band such a multi-dimension, especially those first at least 7 or 8 albums. So there you have it. One of my top 10 favorite bands of all time. The incredible, from Long Island, New York, Blue Oyster Cult. Oh, and actually, if you want to dig back, there was an album that came out in limited edition. I got it. It was called the Stock Forest Group. It was an album that they recorded, and they never released it. Elektra Records never released it. And I think Rhino Handmade released it. I've got a limited edition version, album number 1710 of 5000, came out in 2001, and it's the original songs from those Elektra recordings, and it's a really cool way to hear it. So it predates the first album, and it's like heavy metal or the proto hard rock stuff that the first album has, with a little bit of like a jam band ethic to it. It's kind of really cool. So if BOC makes you want to dig in, if you really go down this journey with them, you may want to check out, of course, Buck Dharma's Flat Out, his solo album from '82, and then the Stock Forest Group albums from that were never released. You might really, really, really enjoy it. So, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Hope that gives you many hours of listening pleasure, some exploration to do while you're staying home, isolating, quarantining yourself, and let's help flatten this curve and stay safe, and hopefully we'll be back out soon. Okay? Peace, everybody.